Hey friends, welcome to the first part of the shaping tutorial. As you can see, we have completed the hands. That is what this tutorial is going to be about, but I'll give you a quick overview on what the shaping tutorials will be like. So I asked in the first video what you guys wanted to see, and it was a mix of showing all the details, but not too in-depth. So that's my goal. I'm going to try to make these tutorials as short as possible while showing the full structure of everything. So we're just going to do the hands today, and then in the future we're going to be working on the pleats, so for the battle dress and the shoulder pads, and then we're going to go into finishing the chest plate, the legs, and then finally the hat and the face. And then once all those are done, I'll do a quick overview on some of the different poses you can do with the samurai, as the model is pretty flexible. But yeah, let's dive in. All right, so we're gonna start off with the fingers, and I'm gonna use the full crease pattern with the finger creases in place to kind of reference what to do. And it's pretty simple, except for this thumb area, which is a little confusing. And I'll explain that as we get to it. But both sides are pretty much the same. Now, as you see, this has the sword faced up, and this is for the sheath face down. That only changes things slightly with the thumb placement, but I'll show what to do to work around that. And so first off, we're gonna crease up the fingers, and how you do that is you take your flap, and I'm gonna start with the sword side. And on the part facing the sword, you're going to find around the middle of the flaps. Now, as you can see, we have our Elias stretch right here. You just want to be on the top side of that at least. So I'm going to go about here actually. And you're just going to squash this flap in so it makes a little triangle like that. And then you're just going to close it to crease everything together like this. Like that. And that makes all the creases for the fingers. So that makes it go all the way down like that. And that's why we don't actually pre-crease those, because this saves a lot of time. Now what we're going to do is we're going to open up the layer a little bit. So I'm going to grab the edge flap on the sword, and this is towards the top of the samurai. I'm going to pull it open like this. And we're going to want 4 fingers and then a thumb. So right now we're focusing on the 4 fingers, and those form from 4 points. So from our pre-creasing, we can see we have 1, 2, 3, and then we need to go 1 more. You don't want to open the whole model up in case you get confused, but there's our 4th finger. And so if I show on the crease pattern, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 points. And those are our 4 fingers. And so what we're going to want to do is, if you look on the crease pattern, they're all mountain fold. So this technique is very, very common on anything that has fingers, and it's I believe diagrams call them sinks, kind of, or they kind of show them as sinks. I just kind of collapse them like this. You can see over time, I'm sure if you've done these before, you have your own method of approaching this, but I am going to recrease everything mountain, as everything is mountain, and then I'm going to close it up as such. Right, so right there, all the way to the last, or the 4th finger, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. And then when I close it up, you can see that it's kind of like a sink fold. However, you don't have to be scared or worried about it. I think the stigma of sink folds is very intimidating, but in reality, you can just open up and collapse it. And collapsing, you know, is much less scary. Basically, all of box pleat are sinks in some shape or form. So, you know, not anything too intimidating. There's our 4th pleat. So we're going to close this up because we don't want to go too far. Like that. 2, 3, and oh, I forgot our last finger. All right, so now we are getting to this other flap, which is going to turn into our thumb. So as you can see, it's still open like this. But I do have my fingers, so you can count 1, 2. Actually, we're missing one. 1, 2, 3, 4. There it is. Right, so if I close it up fully, it'll look like this. Right, so we have our 4 fingers. 1, 2, 3, and then 4 is this last one right here. And it's going to complete when we finish the thumb. So we're going to do the thumb now. And as you can see, it's like an Elias stretch that starts off as 2 units, but then it continues past this diagonal line. And this whole section is just because we have this diagonal line running through, and we need to compensate for the Elias stretch. So here you're really going to want to pay attention to where the creases are and refer it back to the crease pattern. So do your best not to get lost, but really try to understand where everything is. But we're going to open up one more layer, and what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to make our diamond right here. So we have 1, and then we're going to just mountain fold pre-crease 2 like that, and make it 2 units on the other side as well. 1, 2, so you can see we have 2 units right here. That's the 2 units right here. And then we're going to open up more and pre-crease across to this way. And as you can see, it intersects with this diagonal line, and this is where our thumb point comes out. But since we have this section, we have to fix it basically. So we're gonna go 2 more down like this. And if you understand like packing molecules a lot and how paper space works, then you'll understand why we need 2 on the far side so that our whole flap can be a layer of 2. I'm not going to go into that, but should kind of make sense. And then same thing on this side, we're going to fold 1, 2, and this starts to cross into our original Elias stretch. And I know this may be very confusing, but I'll show what it looks like on the crease pattern. Okay, so we have our 2 2x2 diamonds, 1 there, 1 here, right? So 1, 2 here, 2, 2 here. We have our point here, and we're gonna wanna focus on this as our thumb. And what we're gonna do now is treat this as an Elias stretch. So right here, I'm gonna close this up as if we were making a regular Elias stretch in the middle, like that. And we're gonna do the same thing on the other side, but you'll start to notice that this is where things get a little fishy, because our original Elias stretch is gonna fight at this corner. And I'll show what to do right there, but you're gonna want to try your best just to have this as a 2x2 unit. So I can place my thumb up here like that. I'm gonna open it up here, finish this side of the Elias stretch. And basically the last portion here is this funny business right in this section. And now there's a couple ways to do chibi, and depending on how you're approaching it, it'll kind of come out different. Now this chibi technically isn't flat folding because we had to invert the grid for this Elias stretch, and that's just like a planning mistake on my part, because I wasn't originally planning to have fingers, but when I discovered I could fit in fingers like this, then that's where we ran into the issue. However, it still works. So what you're gonna wanna do is try your hardest to recollapse as much of the hilt as you can. And when it gets to this section where it fights it, I'm going to keep the mountain fold, but it's going to push in the other side. So it makes diagonals on half a grid unit, like this. And as you can see, it's not perfectly clean. I'm gonna try to show it on camera. It's gonna be a little hard to show, but it's going to open up this way at the same time as completing these diagonals on this side. That way they can all fold together in a straight line, and that allows us to collapse everything back down. And as for your thumb, you're gonna wanna lay this backwards. So back into the arm, like this. And then we can therefore close this up, fold everything in place, and then re-pivot our sword into place. Just like this. And as you can see, there is a little bit of distortion in my layers now because of that weird move. So I'm not sure if you can tell that it's a little bit strained here. So if you're using thicker paper, this move is going to be a little bit harder to do, but try to adjust it to the best of your abilities. Like that. And then you get your sword. And 5 fingers. And don't forget your thumb is tucked away in here. Right there. There it is. Cool. So now, we're actually just going to leave this guy in here for now. We're going to worry about the fingers on this side, just to thin them out. And then I'll show you what to do for the rest of it. Cool. All right. So next up, fingers. Now this part's pretty straightforward. What you're going to want to do is you're going to take your fingers and you're going to bisect this angle, basically folding edge to edge. And for those of you who've seen this before, you know what's coming, like that. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And actually, normally I just fold all of these at once, but to be more precise in your pre-creasing, do them one at a time, like this. So you're going to do this for all, every single one. So I'm going to time lapse that really quick. All right, so we finished our finger pre-creasing, and you might expect this, but you're going to unfold our pre-creases here and then sink them down. So let me unfold these, and you have to sink only 3 of the 4, I believe, because the 4th one, because we have that 2 layers of finger space, yeah, we actually don't have to sink this one, so you can leave that tucked in, I believe. Yeah, you can leave this one tucked in. So you just have to do 3 sinks, and let me show you, I'll show you one, but this should make sense. If you've never done this before, then hopefully I can show this to you properly, but it's a very common sink fold, so don't stress out too much. Now this takes a little bit of time. I see from people who folded it, I've seen them skip this step a lot or fold it very uncleanly. But the more careful you are, the less stressful it is. So as you can see, the edges, I am just mountain folding the creases like this before I actually collapse. That way I can ensure it's a little bit cleaner. Now, obviously, depending on the paper you're using, it's going to be easier or harder to complete this sink fold. So if you're using single tissue, it's going to be a little bit harder. If you're using something thicker, it might also be harder. It kind of just depends on your experience with the paper and how you are with sink folds. But as you can see, voila, there we have a sink. And so I like to go the outside edges in, because even though we have to spread the layers to get access to these inner layers to do the sink folds, once these 2 are done, you can kind of pull them together like this. That way you see the sink fold still holds its shape, and I'm able to do the sink fold here. So I'm going to want to do this side as well, and then after I show this one more time, I'm going to time lapse it. Take your time on this. You know, this is probably my least favorite part of this design. But I think the fingers add an extra dimension of detail, I guess, that makes the samurai stand out. As you know, getting a paper model to have fingers while holding like a sword is a fairly, you know, detailed attribute, this design. So, you know, I'm just carefully doing the sync fold. If you can't get it perfectly, the main thing to think about here is the points for the finger, and the cleaner the points are, then the better the finger will look. So boom, just like that. There we have our sync fold, and now we can continue on to the other fingers. And I'm gonna time lapse that, and I'll meet you back once they're done. All right, so we finished all the sync folds for the fingers. So as you can see now, they are all like this. And the last thing we have to do is, at least on the hand, is the thumb. And so all you're gonna wanna do here is reverse fold this guy like that. And you want him to be about where the actual sword is, maybe a little behind it. As the thumb is going to kind of have the illusion of gripping around the sword. And then from here, we're just going to want to thin this simply with some mountain or valley folds. So I'm just going to valley fold inside here, valley fold this side, like that, and then keep the valley fold or the reverse fold this. And I'm folding a little fast, but you know, feel free to be precise with this. The more precise and clean, the better it'll look. And as you can see, after I thin it, it's about right in the middle of the blade. Now what we're going to do is we're actually going to focus a little bit on the sword right here. And so a small detail on the sword is that because of this unit, it's a little bit weird. If we just valley fold it, it's going to look disconnected. However, we're going to do a little trick here. So if we have the sword facing up, we're actually going to mountain fold all the way through the sword. So I like to pre-crease this to get clean. So I'm just going to work on the top part, as it's the, I guess, most important part to keep clean. So I like to start with that, like this, and fold all the way down. And once I get to the hilt, I'm just gonna pause for a little bit, and I'm going to mountain fold the hilt in half, like this, until I get to the middle. And what we're gonna do in the middle is we're going to force it to mountain fold like this. So it's actually gonna kind of stick up. And then we're gonna pull it towards the fingers, and that makes a clean sword. And what I mean by a clean sword is that there's no interruptions when you look at it. So let me get this clean so you guys can see. And this makes a great illusion when you show the open face of the sword. So obviously we have some consequence folds here, but it looks like this part is just one blade. And so that's a little style thing I enjoy. And as you can see, when we did that, it pushed the thumb behind the sword. And that's just another detail. And then from here, I'm not gonna go over this too much, but you're basically going to reverse fold the fingers out to make a hand. And this part is up to you. So take some time, look at how, you know, people grip swords, just kind of some hand anatomy, and try to replicate that as best as possible. But very simply, you're just going to spread out the layers that you made, these reverse fold layers. They're not gonna be huge, but just try to get them a little bit splayed out. And it might look like I'm just pulling them, but try to do crimps. Try to do small crimps to get each one out, and then the very edge one be bigger crimp to make the pinky, and the pinky is a smaller finger than the other fingers, so keep that in mind when you're folding. And I'm having a little trouble grabbing it because my fingernail is kind of destroyed right now. But there you go. So you're gonna reverse that guy down, crimp this guy forward for the fourth finger. And if your layers start to get splayed, try to fix them. You don't want your fingers to look fat. The sharper they are, the better they look. And if they get fat like this, then you can just fold them in half. Kind of has to happen for stretching. But we're gonna do this. Get our fingers out. And then as you can see, they're like way in front of the sword. And so this is another little detail, is we're going to crimp them backwards, and we want to crimp behind the thumb. So if you think of a glove, right, the glove ends about right here. So that's kind of what we're going for. We're making a glove that crimps backwards right along the sword, and there's no real reference point for here. But once it's here, then if you want, you can add a little bit more detail to the fingers. So I'm most likely going to fold these in half to keep them clean, make them pointy looking, like this. Splay them out, and take a lot of time on this. Don't rush it like I'm doing. When I'm done, I'm going to go back and look over this. And then you can, once these are done, you can just kind of work on curling them around the sword, like that. And that is your hand. Once again, you can see these don't look that great right now, but I'll show you later on once I put some finishing touches. This is one of the finishing touches you can do to make these look a lot cleaner, a lot better. And the thumb, you're gonna just wrap around on the other side of the sword, like that. So even though the anatomy isn't 100%, again, we're just looking for the illusion that he is holding the sword, like that. So we did one arm. Now you're going to do, or one hand, you're going to do the exact same thing on this side. I'm going to show the thumb unit because that's a little bit different. Not much, but I'm going to time lapse myself doing it on the other side. And so you guys go ahead, work on this. Honestly, the hand is the hardest shaping part of the samurai, and I think it's just the hardest part of this model in general. So once these are out of the way, give yourselves a hand, and good job for completing the hardest part of this model. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and time lapse that, and I'll catch up with you guys when I get to the thumb. All right, so we are now at the thumb on the left arm, and the thing that makes it different is that the hilt faces up and the blade faces down. Now, this makes it a difference because there's a chance you accidentally trap one of the either the thumb layer or the hilt while you collapse it, but otherwise all the creases are the same. The collapse method is the same, so as you can see, I did the double diamond, 2 units here, same thing here, this Elias stretch. And when you collapse it down, actually let's get this chibi layer done. Just chibi fold. So yeah, everything is operating very similarly to the other side, like that, like this, like that. Because we want to swivel this guy down, when we fold on the chibi layer, you're gonna want to pay attention the direction of the thumb. So last time we folded it down, but it makes it a little bit more difficult to swivel. So what you're gonna want to do is, I like to just start reverse folding the thumb to make sure that it can sit upwards, and then I recollapse the hilts all together at the same time to make sure nothing gets trapped. And it might not look like anything's happening here, but just trust me, if your paper starts tearing or something, then you know you kind of trapped a layer that wasn't supposed to be trapped. Very small detail, nothing too different, but just thought to mention that in case you guys ran into that. But otherwise, we have the same result. The thumb is about halfway in between the hilt. The sword, or I guess the hilt, faces downwards, the long part, and then we have our fingers here. So get something that looks like this. And then the finger syncs and the method I used to do the sword is exactly the same. You know, you're gonna do the mountain fold it around so it's a clean flap, all that jazz. So get that done. I'll time lapse it just in case you guys want to watch, see how I approach it. But that's it, and I'll check in once I'm done with this. All right, so we have completed both hands of the samurai with the sword and the sheath. And great job for making it through that. Like I said, this is the most technical and probably the hardest part of this design. In the next tutorial, we're gonna work on some pleats. So that includes the battle dress and the shoulder pads. So make sure to look forward to that. And I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Bye.
All this origami got me going kamikaze.